Folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, it's a very cloudy day. It's supposed to rain, get some thunderstorms. Doesn't look like anything too severe, but definitely have some thunderstorms en route to us. And so the skies, they kind of, well, they look like that. You know, they're just the cloudy, hazy weather, but that is normal for this time of the year. I know that, well, I know how the cycle goes. After about 3 or 4 days, everyone starts to get tired of whatever's in the news and you're ready to move on. I suspect that's where a lot of you are with this subject, but I do have one more thing to talk about this. So bear with me, this is important. Number one, there is another, they believe, at least one more solar flare that's going to be impacting us probably in the next 12 to 24 hours. This is one of the big ones, but I still don't think that it's going to do anything to us, at least substantially. This isn't a, go hide in your bunker kind of thing, but there could be another pretty significant, probably even a G5 geomagnetic storm that's en route today because of another one. The sun's still very active, and as it kind of does its spinning around thing, or we spin around, and we should probably get some more solar flares in the future. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is not necessarily about that. It is about noticing more profoundly this past weekend how weak our geomagnetic field has gotten. We've known this for a while. We've known that it's been weakening, but the amount of Aurora and all that kind of stuff. I know that some of you are going to be wanting to talk about the HARP thing, and I'm going to make a lot of people upset on this one. Yes, the HARP was active and doing all of its stuff up there, but I would be very, very cautious to buy into that the Aurora that was seen all over the planet so far south had anything to do with HARP. The amount of energy that it would have taken to create an Aurora that massive, covering that much of the planet, it's not even in the realm of physics for HARP to even produce. So be cautious of jumping in on that. Could there be some weird wonky things going on where they kind of manipulating things? I'm not saying that's not true, but the entire planet being covered, or at least a large amount of the planet being covered in that Aurora, there's no possible way. It's not within the realm of physics for that to produce that amount of energy, especially considering that the HARP is a radio antenna and the Aurora, like that we saw, was charged particles. Anyways, I really don't want to get caught up in that. That's just in the weeds that I don't want to be in. What I want to talk about, though, is something so non-exciting, but is so important, is that how this is going to affect us as homesteaders when it comes to producing food. Now, for the last 2 or 3 years, myself, I have experienced it, and many of you have reported into me that you've noticed a change in your gardens, that it's difficult to keep your gardens hydrated, that no matter how much you water them, that when the sun gets on them, it starts to wilt. Now, I've been a gardener my whole life. I grew up doing it. We were very self-sufficient growing up. And so it's natural as walking and talking to me being out in the garden. And I have noticed the last few years, especially the last 2 was most significant, that even when it wasn't terribly dry, where I'm not talking about in a drought situation or, very dry weather, just a normal day, that when the sun hit its peak, that the whole garden just started to wilt. Plants that would not normally wilt in the sun, we're watching that. I've watched my garden in places and I've done my own I've talked about this. I've done my own little experiments, trying to see what I could do to change that. And I've taken shade cloth, and I've, like last year or year before last, we planted a bunch of beans, and I covered half of them in shade cloth and half of them not. And I watered the whole thing the same. And the one in the shade cloth, they exploded in size, and the ones that I didn't have under shade cloth hardly produced anything. They were yellow and just not doing good. That's not normal here in the Ozarks. If we lived like down the Southwest, that might be a normal scenario. But around here in the Ozarks, that's not normal. I've up until a couple of years ago, I've never heard of anyone in the Ozarks using shade cloth over their garden. I've never seen it before in my whole life. I've lived here my whole life. I've never seen it. But now more and more people are starting to use it because it's the only way it seems to get their garden to grow. I'm no expert on this, but from everything I've researched and in my just personal opinion, what this could be is that the solar radiation coming from the sun is just that much more intense. About 2/3 of the sun that comes in, the particles and the radiation, is blocked by the geomagnetic field around the planet, and the other third is blocked by the atmosphere. As that geomagnetic field weakens, that means more of those charged solar particles, that solar radiation, is coming into this planet, and it's hitting the surface, it's hitting us, it's hitting the plants, the trees. And that's very possible why we're seeing, maybe not the only reason, but it's possible why we're seeing some pretty strange extreme weather, because it's throwing things out of balance. Now, I'm no scientist at all on this. I'm not. Basically, what I know is from my personal experience and what I read and what I watch online. and I believe that as this solar cycle and everything continues to worsen, it's going to make a huge impact on us when it comes to growing food. Now, why is that so important? Well, I get on here almost every day, or at least several times a week, and tell you need to be producing your own food. That without all the things that's going on, that, we have to produce our own food. The food is becoming so contaminated and so modified and so non-food anymore that we can't eat it. And then, food will be used as a weapon, starvation. You don't have the right biometrics and the right injections and the right paperwork and all this kind of stuff to get food, or food just may not be available because of, other reasons, famines and supply chains and all kinds of stuff. We've already seen over the last few years how fragile the food system is. And so that's why I've encouraged you over and over again. It's one of my number one things, is that you have to be producing food. Well, now the big question is what are you going to do when you have to be producing food, but the sun is making it very difficult to produce food? We have to make adjustments because of this. Now, we don't know all of the answers. We don't know exactly what's going on and all that kind of stuff. But some of the things we're already doing is working. And I'm telling you, watering is important. But it's not so much that the ground is dry as that the plants are getting beat to death. But one of the things is you're going to need to make sure you have a good water supply. More water than probably what you're expected. Whatever the amount. Now, some of you have a nice well, or maybe you're even off of a municipal or county water supply. So for right now, that may not be a problem, but it will be a problem in the future. So as I've said before, have contingency plans. And on your water supply, there needs to be a big contingency plan. Often, as preppers, we talk about water from the sole aspect of us drinking it. How much water does it take for me as a human being to stay alive, right? And then next on that, we add in hygiene, whether it's cleaning our bodies, cleaning the food, utensils, pots and pans and stuff. But a lot of times as preppers, we don't include water when it comes to growing crops. We just assume, well, it's going to fall out of the sky and it'll just make do. And while there's certainly some truth to that, depending on the area you live in, and I mean, it's almost, the Ozarks is borderline on being like a subtropical kind of area. We get enough rain, enough green. It's not quite tropical, but it's close. And even here, we're experiencing difficulty, and it's not just me. We have a large community, and nearly everyone there, I talked to them over the last few years about the difficulties they've had in gardening, and they've all said the same thing, that the sun is just killing their plants. It's not that it's dry. They're watering every day. It's just killing their plants. We've mulched more than we've ever mulched before. We're using shade cloth. We're ground covering, all this kind of stuff to hold the moisture in. That's not the problem. You know, I can go out there in the afternoon in the summer, and the plants are all wilted. They look like they're dying, and you dig down and the dirt is, you know, the soil is nice and moist. It's the sun, and we have to start taking account for that. Increase your water capabilities, but then also you need to be, the best thing that I can tell you is the shade cloth. And you know, your crops are starting to grow, your garden's starting to grow, most of you. I know some of you far north, not quite yet, but for the rest of you, I would strongly advise you to look into this. I have no affiliates or anything, and I don't like it because it is a Chinese company, okay? But one of the best I found was, I think it's Vevor, I don't know how it's pronounced, Vevor. You can buy large rolls of shade cloth. Now, depending on the size of the garden, I know some of you still are doing small little gardens, and you can buy shade cloth that's like tarps, and it's, you know, it's all pre-cut and hemmed and everything. Well, for me, that doesn't work. You know, my garden's almost 10,000 square foot, okay? It would take me forever to put all those little 10 by 10 tarps up. So we find rolls of it. And I'll use T-posts. I'll put T-posts around, and then I've actually taken, and I've made videos on this. If I do it again this year, I'll show you again. But I've taken like 10-foot 2x4s, you know, 8-foot 2x4s, whatever, and you know, use those as like make it like a tent, basically, is what I'm saying. And the 2x4s, I'll put into the ground, you know, bury about a couple of feet, use them, make them like a big stake, you know, tent pole, and that'll be the center of it. And then I'll have the T-posts in the perimeter and have it all tied off real good. I know it sounds janky, and it's because it is kind of janky, but I try to do things the most economical way because I don't have a lot of money. And I'm telling you, the difference is, it's been astronomical. You can't even hardly compare. They're so different. Now, I would advise, you know, if you do that kind of method that I just explained, in times that there could be severe storms, I would go out there and I would untie all the ropes and just kind of lay it on the ground next to the garden, roll it up, lay it on the ground. That way it wouldn't blow it off or wouldn't destroy it, and then go back and put it up. Once you work out the system, it's not too terrible. That's what I've done the last couple of years, and it's just night and day, the difference. And like I said, I've not been able to cover the entire garden, and so the areas that I haven't, and each year I'm buying more and more of this shade cloth. And the areas that's not getting covered, just it's hardly producing anything. And so it makes me think that if we as self-sufficient preppers are preparing for the incoming doom by living out of our gardens, and yet our gardens aren't going to be able to produce anything because of the solar activity, this is something we need to plan for. And this past weekend, we saw that the geomagnetic field around this planet has weakened substantially. And we need to, there's all kinds of things, weather it's changing. There's already been a couple of volcanoes and some earthquakes in the last 24 hours. This will probably continue over the next several days of seeing a lot of activity like that. But it's also going to affect the growing season. It's going to affect the climate. It's going to affect the weather. And it's going to affect how our crops grow. And we will be dealing with this probably quite a bit for the next few years. And we need to be aware of it. And we need to be working really hard to make adjustments to our growing. I know this isn't an exciting topic, but I'm telling you, this is something that we need to be taking care of, because, you know, you do all this work, you develop your soil, you know, grow big gardens, get it all big, and then all of a sudden the sun just kills it because things have changed. If you have other suggestions, I would certainly like to hear them. I'm sure the people in the comments would like to hear them. But I'm telling you, I've talked to so many people that have gardened. There's several people in our group, a couple of people that are master gardeners. They've gardened their whole life. They've gardened professionally. And they're telling me the same thing. The last couple of years, it's been so difficult to grow because the sun is just killing the plants. And so I'm telling you, we've got to make these adjustments. We've got to change how we do things so that we can produce enough food that we need. I mean, it's crazy to think, but you do all this work to prepare and to produce food and to survive, and then you're not able to actually grow anything. So definitely be thinking about that. I'm not telling you to go out and buy shade cloth, but it might be a good idea. Now, it comes in different, I'll end with this. I know I've rattled on and on. Some of you just hate that. Get to the point. I only want to watch a short video. I've watched so many TikToks and shorts. I can't stand anything longer than a minute. That's what I think's going on. But anyways, shade cloth comes in percentages, and the higher the percentage, the more sun that it blocks out. And so I have been playing with it, and it's going to be different with different areas. So if you live down in the Southwest, you know, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, where there's a whole lot more sun, more radiation, you probably want a higher level. Here, I was thinking, well, I don't want to block out all the sun. So I have been purchasing the 40% for my area, and that has done perfectly. So it's not blocking out, you know, you're still getting 60% of the sun. So I've been purchasing 40% in my area. You know, if we're down in Texas or, you know, someplace like that where it's already hotter and people are already using it, I may buy 60 or 70% or something like that. But you can just kind of play around with it also. It's time to get our houses in order, folks. Too many things are happening. We cannot just sit around and just hope and believe that everything's going to be all right. We've got to be active. If you want to move mountains, you have to get up off the couch to do it. You need to be preparing mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.